Welcome back to Cameras, Crowns, and Chaos. This is Lindsay King. I am your hostess with the mostest. And today I have a super special guest with me. I am so pumped to have her here. I'd like to welcome Mrs. Shelby Beauregard. Hi, Shelby.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me today. So Shelby comes from Clarkston, Michigan, and Shelby is currently the Mrs. Clarkston in the Mrs. America pageant. We're going to get into that in a little bit because I'm really excited to hear all about that. So Shelby is the mama bear to two adorable little boys and the devoted wife to her husband, Ben. Shelby is also the owner and CEO of Bovista Partners and the co-owner of Memorable Moments Event Planning and Design. Shelby also volunteers her time regularly within the Miss America organization, specifically with the Miss Michigan organization. She runs their social media. She does lots of behind the scenes volunteering, and her name is a name that I've heard come up in my studio many a times with my pageant clients who are coming in for pageant headshots. I've heard her name from contestants. I've also heard her name from moms, and they're always talking about how she's just really nice and she's always there to lend a hand. So Shelby's definitely a girl's girl who is probably spreading herself a little bit too thin sometimes, which is what we do as women and as moms. But she's always there for everybody. And so I was really excited to have her on because I knew she would be a really bright light on the podcast. So I personally first caught wind of Shelby, oh my gosh, many moons ago. I saw Shelby compete at a Miss Michigan preliminary pageant called Miss Tip of the Mitt, and she won that pageant. So I've been very well aware of her since that time, but that was how many years ago, Shelby?
I think it's 13 years ago now that I won that. Okay. So it's been a very long time.
It's been a minute. It's just been a minute. I mean, we both look exactly the same as we did 13 years ago, but we're older and we're wiser now. So I caught wind of her there. And then, like I said, I've heard her name in the studio over the years. I know that she's involved with Miss America, Miss Michigan. I knew that she was a local director within the Miss Michigan organization. And I believe you actually sent, was it 10 girls to the state pageant?
10 girls between Miss and Teen over that time, because they also had me step in at times if a director couldn't fulfill the duty for the year. They've asked me to kind of fill that role. So I've also taken girls who are not technically like Miss Mid-Michigan, which was the local that I ran. I would take other girls too.
It's awesome to know that there are people out there who are willing to give so much time to the Miss America organization, because if you're not familiar with that particular organization, it's all volunteer based. No one is getting paid. So this is all time that you are giving out of the kindness of your heart. And I'll tell you what, from the front side of it, what viewers can see and people who are not involved, it just looks like it's one of those things. You throw it together in a day. The girls, they come, they compete, they do their pageant, and everybody goes home. But there's so much more that goes into it, not just during pageant week, but also the entire year. So Shelby and I finally connected in real life after knowing of each other for about 13 years now. And she came into the studio and we did some pageant headshots, and she was fabulous. And we had so much fun and we connected, and I loved her energy. So today we're going to focus strictly on her role as Mrs. Clarkston for the Mrs. America pageant. So Shelby, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and we're just going to let everybody get to know you better. So my first question for you is, when did you start competing in pageantry, and what was the driving force to make you start competing?
So I actually started competing in pageants when I was 16 years old. There was a local Miss Davison pageant, and because that's where I graduated from high school from. That's where I grew up. It's right outside of Flint. And I don't even know and remember why I decided to do it. I was Susie High School, though. I did it all. I was I need to immerse myself. It's very me.
Sense. That makes sense.
Very me.
On brand.
Yes. So I was like, well, what other chaos can I get into? This is great. And I ended up taking first runner-up, which in that pageant, you still get to do all the stuff because then you're just on court and you go to all the things. And while I was Miss Davison's court, I actually met Kirsten Haglund when she was Miss Michigan.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, it was a great interaction that changed truly the trajectory of my life. And I love that she has no idea how much impact she had.
I love that.
We were at a Queen's reception at some parade, and she sat next to me and talked to me for like 15 minutes.
That's amazing.
It's truly the definition of, it's not what you say, it's how you make somebody feel.
Yes.
Because I love
that.
I don't remember anything she said to me. I don't remember our conversation, but I remember walking away from that and being like, I want to be that.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. That seriously, like, That makes me really emotional. Like, obviously, I have not competed in, I don't know, like 25 years in the Miss America organization, but when they talk about the sisterhood is real, it really is a real thing. And how you make other people feel really says so much about you. And I love that you said, like, you don't really remember what she said, but you remember how you felt in that moment. You remember how inspirational she was. And, you know, the fact that here's a future Miss America sitting with you, talking to you, and you're, you know, a high school girl who she doesn't have to sit with and she doesn't have to talk to. But that's one thing I do love about the organization is that it really does open women up and young women up and teaches them to be real leaders and role models to the other young women who are their ages around them. And I love that.
Yeah, it's creating the experience. They always say, like, people might not ever meet a Miss America. They might not ever meet a Miss Michigan, but they're going to meet you. And it's about giving that experience. And that's exactly what she did and changed my life forever. I was 17 then, my senior year of high school. And I knew that this is something I wanted to do. So I signed up and I competed at my very first local when I was 17 years old. Wow. And it just really launched from there. And it's been a journey. And I love that that's how it started, was kind of from somebody who I got to watch achieve their dream.
Right.
And how inspiring for me to be like, I've met her.
I know her.
And look at her.
Yes. It's like Buddy the Elf. Like, I know him. Yes. Yes. Like, yes. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. I love that.
I've never looked back and I'm still involved.
Oh, that's so awesome. Does it feel like a lifetime ago since you were that 17-year-old girl?
Yes.
Like, do you just feel like you've learned so much?
The growth is astronomical, just like, you know, life when you're that age, just like life in general. But the one thing that pageantry from the very young age taught me was all it takes is one person to believe in you. And I had one person. I mean, I competed in 13. I such a journey, such a wonderful journey, which is why I'm still involved in this, because it's all about the people that you meet. You have to win the experience. And I truly felt that I won the experience because I competed 13 times before I ever won a local. So
that's always incredible.
Keep chugging along. But I had Debbie Nelson. She was the director for Miss Greater Kalamazoo. I think it was Kalamazoo County at the time. She saw me compete at my very first local. And then I went to Western Michigan University. So then I competed in Kalamazoo. And she saw something in me. I was not her title holder. She took me dress shopping. She would mock interview me. She single-handedly prepared me and changed my life and made me always realize that all it takes is one person to change what you're doing. So in turn, can be that person for somebody and help them get there and achieve what they're doing. So it's this like cycle because it has enriched my life so much. Mm-hmm. That's why I have to stay involved. I love it. And I love that growth that people experience.
I love that. Like, I love your origin story. I love that foundation and that, obviously this is all about you today, but that it definitely makes me think back to my own experience and my first time as a title holder and having a director who, you know, from the outside looking in, she seemed like she would be really strict, and she was, but strict in like the best way possible because she wanted me to be my best self possible. And when I was her title holder, I think I was, just about to turn 19 or just about to turn 20, somewhere around there. And I am 43 now and I still carry her kindness with me and I still carry her direction with me. And she was so good to me and she opened her home to me. And I had a very tragic event when I was a title holder only one time. And I had a very tragic series of weeks leading up to Miss Michigan. I lost my grandmother, I lost my aunt, and then I lost my brother all in 3 weeks. And it was a lot, right? Like it was a lot. And you know, the board had invested so much time and energy and effort into me. Only for 6 weeks prior to me to go to Miss Michigan, all of these things just happened and my life fell apart. Oh, and then my appendix ruptured, which is neither here nor there, but it was just like one thing after another, you know?
A lot happening.
Yes. And I remember Diane, my director, Diane Gruber, shout out, because she is the best lady ever. She sat me down at her kitchen table and she said, if this is not the right moment in your life to go to Miss Michigan, then don't go. It doesn't matter. There are much bigger things going on in your life right now. You don't have to go to Miss Michigan. We can send the first runner up. Like, you have to take care of you. And I remember that was such a defining moment for me because, you know, when people are helping you and they're building you, but they can benefit from it. So if I would have gone on to Miss Michigan and I would have won, that would have been a feather in her cap and in the cap of the board members. But when someone says, look, throw it all away, throw the whole thing away, do what you need to do what's right for you, and you feel that genuinely coming from them, that is when you know that you are loved. You are genuinely cared about and treasured. And in that moment, I thought, I don't know that many people who would just take someone in, know them for less than a year, and really just love them with everything that they had. And as a matter of fact, when I sat at that table with her husband, Bill, he was also there, and he was shaking his head like, yes, like this is what we're going to do. We're going to do what you want to do. We're going to let you take the lead. So I believe that she believed so much in me in so many different ways. It was amazing that I was able to see how much somebody cared about me who had so much invested in my success, but she was more concerned about my success and my emotional well-being as a human, not as a title holder. And I think that that's one of the best things that I got out of the Miss America organization was the relationships. And that's why I still love it to this day. That's why I was a sponsor for many years. It's just the best place to be to watch young women be built.
I do love the origin stories. I love that everybody's is different.
I do too.
So I love hearing how people get involved in all of their backstories.
I love your story. That was amazing. Like, that's awesome. I didn't know all that. So that's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about your current involvement in the Miss America organization and what you're doing today?
So I have switched roles. So I am no longer a local executive director. I have this really bad habit of like seeing something that I think could be improved and I'm like, I can do that. Like, I'll figure it out. Because I can't just let it go because someone always has to be the one to step up. So
absolutely.
I'm like,
or it never gets done.
Exactly. So like, I can do this. So it kind of started when the pageant went to the high school a couple years ago.
Okay. And you're talking about the Miss Michigan pageant.
The Miss Michigan pageant. Yep. Moved to a high school from the big theater that they're usually at. And they didn't have a way to sell tickets at this venue. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can help you. So I volunteered to do all of the ticket sales and program book sales. So I started the online store. It is. But like I said, it's like a fun thing for me to do.
It is fun. But for people that don't know, that's a lot of work. Like it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. So my professional experience, I had a background in Shopify. So if anyone's a local business, it's the #1 e-commerce website. Right. And so I had experience with that. So I'm like, well, let me just transfer all of that knowledge and help you. So that's what I did. The store's still up and running today. So I still manage all of like the program book sales behind there, the ad sales, like anything that runs through that, that's me. So I still do all of that. And so in Miss Michigan Week, they do a huge event, the brunch, which is a huge auction and a fundraiser. So those transactions get run through the platform too. So I kind of manage the entire platform for that.
Awesome.
And in addition to that, I'm also the floor mom. And so I spend all week with all of the Miss contestants, with Tamara. Shout out to Tamara. I love her. We have she's the best. She's the best. We have so much fun. We do nothing but laugh all week. The girls are always hilarious. And so that keeps me busy during the week too, managing all of that, making sure they're where they need to be. And then in addition to that, I'm the social media manager for Miss Michigan. So I do all of the content that you see during pageant week. That's me. I try to update our Instagram stories and our Facebook stories during the show. So I'll live kind of picture during the show. I added that on last year, intro packages. So I do all of that. And then after that week's over, I go into more of a digital branding mode.
Okay.
So this year, Janae, our wonderful Miss Michigan, lives in Detroit. She works for the Detroit Pistons. So it's more of that boss business, right? So a few weeks after she was crowned, I drove down to Detroit and we spent an entire afternoon, evening shooting all over Detroit. So that she could have content that was related to her brand. So we keep that up to going into Miss America. And I work with the teen as well if they wanted to. My focus is usually the Miss though, because I'm only one person.
Right. I mean, is there anything that you can't do though?
There's
like
a lot of things.
All the things.
There's a lot of things I cannot do, but
I don't know about that.
I think we all have strengths. And so I try to use what I recognize as one of my strengths to bring to the table to make it better. Plus, the social media stuff is fun for the girls. I want them, when they go there, to feel loved and to feel cool.
Yes.
Like, this is cool.
Because it is cool to be there.
It's cool. And
it's so
cool.
fun. Yeah.
So I love that I get to be that side of it to create a different side of the experience for them.
Absolutely.
So that's my current involvement. So I will be at orientation, which is in March, doing some voiceover work and filming the girls in that time. So that's my current involvement. And I really enjoy it because it keeps
That's
me
amazing.
doing stuff all year long too with them.
Yeah. So what does your husband say about all this? Like, is he a pageant husband? Is he like super into it, or does he just kind of like doesn't ask questions, lets you do your thing? Because you have two small kids, you're a
Hmm.
wife, you have two businesses, you've
Hmm.
got your hands so full with volunteering your time with Miss America or Miss Michigan. Like, where do you balance life? Like, how much time do you think that you're devoting to pageantry and to everything else, and where does your family kind of like fall into that mix?
Sure. So it's seasonal, right? It's very
Okay,
seasonal for
yeah.
me. When I ran my local pageant, that was more time that I was spending doing
Mm-hmm.
that. But my husband, he's great. He always says, when I got involved with you, pageantry is never going away.
Oh, I love that.
He's like, I knew that. So, this is a little funny story. We were on a double date with a really good friend of mine who I met through pageantry. And this is like the new guy for her.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband says, when you guys went to the restroom, he was like, I'm so glad that pageantry stuff is over. And he was like,
No,
oh, it ain't ever
no,
over. Like, you
it's
don't
not.
know. He's like, that's not going to work out. And it didn't. So that was really funny.
Because you know what? When you get bit by the pageant bug, like that's a real thing. It is really like it's like a virus. It gets in your system. And whether like for me, I started as a watcher. I was a watcher. That sounds like such a weird word. I started as a viewer and my mom was taking me to the Miss Monroe County pageant every year when I was a little kid. And then that segued into me competing. And then I was a volunteer. And so I've been a spectator, a volunteer. I've done all the things. And also over the years, I have coached girls and now I'm involved, with the pageant headshots. And I don't think that there will ever be a phase of my life where I am not invested at some level. At some level. So you do have to know, like, if you meet a girl and she's already talking to you about pageants right off the rip, or if she's competing, you better get on board or get to
Y-
stepping because
Yes, it's
she'll
not going
always.
away.
It's not.
It's not going
It's
away.
not.
So my husband luckily like embraced this. And
That's
so
awesome.
we're very involved with each other's volunteerism. So it kind of like runs rampant in my house. My husband's a big
Awesome.
volunteer with things that he really enjoys in our community. And so I support him and do that. But he in turn does that for me. So he produced my pageant when I was a local
That's
director.
amazing.
Oh yeah, he was
That's
in the
oh.
oh yeah, sound lights. He ran all of it for me in the back. So he produced it and did all that, which he's very much like me. He doesn't know anything about producing a show. My
Right.
husband is an airline pilot. Like he always jokes, he's like, as a certified airline transport pilot. But he also
You can figure it out.
he
Yeah.
figures it out. And that's kind of the motto in our house. Like, we'll figure it out. And
Everything is
so
about attitude, right? Like can do attitude. If you think that you can't do it, you can't do it. If you think that you can do it, if you don't end up figuring it out, you're going to get pretty darn close. Everything is about attitude, effort, and energy. Those are like three very important words to me. It
yeah,
sounds like that's your vibe.
it is, and that's kind of what we teach our kids too. And so whenever I don't go a lot of places. Like if my kids are home, I'm usually home with them.
Yeah.
But when I do leave, it's really funny because my youngest will be like, "Are you going to the pageant?"
Oh, that's so
So
cute.
they know that mom volunteers and does this, and this is
I love
important.
that.
Uh, I
I love that.
I love that they get to meet Miss Michigans usually, and I kind of made like a thing where they would get pictures with them every year, and
Oh,
it's fun. Like we still have. So my youngest loves art.
okay.
And so he obviously was obsessed with Maya Shootnik, our Miss Michigan from
Uh-huh.
last year,
Oh, I'm
because she is a
sure.
speed painter. And so she sent him like a large, like 8x10 autograph of her, and it's
Oh.
still on my fridge.
Oh, I love that.
Because
Oh, I love that.
he loves her, and so he's always like, I'm gonna be an artist like Miss Maya.
Oh, be
And
still my little mama heart.
it's so cute. And so it's a whole family affair. And I think what people don't realize too is so my husband works 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Okay.
So when he's home, it's great. I've got the flexibility to kind of do what I need to do. But when he's gone, it's like if I get asked to do something or need to do something, I then have to call on additional help. So it's
Right.
not just me that volunteers. it's my village that volunteers.
100%.
Like and I grew up in a family like that. Like my parents instilled with me, you show up.
Yes.
And I always say it's the least I can do. I can show up.
For sure.
But they instilled that in me. So in turn, when someone's like, hey, can you chaperone Miss Michigan here? And it's a few days away, or I can try my best to do those because I have an amazing village behind me.
That's awesome.
So that's what makes all of this possible is them. It's not me. It's the entire village behind me that makes it so I can keep doing things and help those people.
I definitely love your humility, because the thing is, it does take a village to do a lot of things. And I think what I really love in hearing all of that is that while you're following your passion for pageantry and you're volunteering your time, and your husband is also volunteering his time in turn by taking care of the little things that need to be taken care of that maybe you might have taken care of, but now today you're going to escort Miss Michigan somewhere. But your sons are also seeing that, and they are seeing that, right now they don't necessarily understand life and income and money and time and all those things, but there will come a time where they look back and they say, oh my gosh, my mom's been involved with the Miss America organization for as long as I can remember, and she has worked for them as long as I can remember, but holy moly, she never got paid. Right. Because sometimes we do things because they enrich the lives of others, which then in turn also enriches our life. So I love that you're modeling for your children, which I also still think is another principle of Miss America. It's being that great role model, whether it's to other pageant girls, whether it's to someone at the grocery store, just being a good, kind person in your everyday life. I definitely think that that is a value that is still held really strongly within Miss America. Okay. So Shelby, aside from Miss America, and when you competed there as a local competitor going to Miss Michigan, what other pageant systems have you been involved in, or are you currently involved in?
So I started in like a local hometown, so that wasn't affiliated with anything. Went to the Miss America opportunity. It was organization when I went through it. And now
I always forget that it's called opportunity now, but I'm just old school, I know
it just like flows out, and then I'm like delegate, candidate, all the things, and I'm just
right.
I know it's all the dialogue.
Trying
to get my terms right.
Sorry.
But now I'm involved with Mrs. America because I'm just a firm believer that in all of the principles and values and all of the things that pageantry gives you doesn't stop when you get married.
Yes,
I didn't just get married and stop wanting to advocate and better myself and meet people. Like all of the same reasons I competed then didn't go away. And so I actually was at one point, which I know better, never say never. I was like, I'm done. I am throwing my heels up. I am done. And then here we are. Never say never. I'm excited. And I think that as I get older and I became a mom and a mom of a son with developmental delays, you get lost.
For sure.
And I think moms can relate to that. I think pretty much everybody can. You lose yourself. Like at one point, somebody asked me, what do you like to do? And I didn't have an answer for that because I didn't know. I don't know what I like to do. Or they're like, what are you good at? I don't know anymore. Like I got totally lost in that world and motherhood because kind of you have to remember where I was at. So like I said, my husband's a pilot. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. COVID for them, they were booming. So he was flying out of Miami. So when he was gone for 2 weeks, he was gone. Now I had a 1-year-old and I had just brought home my preemie son.
Wow.
So, and then at the beginning, they warned me too, like Colton is my youngest. If Colton was to get sick, it could be detrimental to him. My husband's flying all over the world. So he would come home, and this is before we knew how it was transmitted or anything.
At the beginning, we were all doing some wild things because we just didn't know. We didn't know. And so my husband would leave for 2 weeks and he would come home, but he wouldn't come home. He would live for a week in my parents' trailer. In their camper. And so if he felt fine after a week, then he would come home for a week. And then we would repeat. And so you can see how in that time period, because then I couldn't get help. There's no one. And I was working, and doing all of these things. And so I feel like in that time frame, it's understandable how I kind of got lost in the shuffle. Absolutely.
Like
oh my gosh, absolutely.
I'm in survival mode.
I think COVID in general it changed people and it made people reprioritize, but it also just, it really shook people to the core of who they were, having nothing to do with the illness itself, but how the illness impacted everyone's lives. So I can understand how here you are, you're a mom, you've got, you know, a little boy, you have basically you have a baby, and then you have a baby, a premature baby. And then we're going through a pandemic, which is something that you and I have never been through before. And neither has anyone else who's been alive. Actually, I think that they said that there were, you know, a handful of people still alive that had gone through that 1918 Spanish flu. But I mean, you're trying to figure things out and navigate. And then even if you hadn't been in there, I'm in a different phase in my life than you are. My kids are 18 and 20. And I will say, I feel like for me, I'm just now getting back into figuring out who I am and what I enjoy, what I like, what I'm good at, what I'm not, and what I want to pursue. And honestly, part of that right here is what we're doing. It's me being able to say, you know what, I'm just going to try something out because A, I have the time, and B, I have the desire, and C, I just want to see if this is something that like resonates with me. So we definitely go through those phases as moms. I believe that, you know, you go into being a mom, being Shelby, and then all of a sudden one day you're just mom and you're like, wait, I think my name used to be something else other than just mom. And it's a blessing.
It is, but I always say I love this, but I need to use my brain in another way.
Yes.
I need both. And so I had friends who have been Mrs. Michigan in the past. And so they have always encouraged me, you should do this. Like, you should do this. And I'm always like, no, it's fine. But then, you know, my kids are getting a little older. They're 6 and 5. I've got a little bit more time. And I'm like, you know what? I want to do something for me. And that brings me joy, that I can develop myself, continue that. I can network and meet people. Like I said, all of the same reasons I competed at Miss were starting to come back to me.
I love that.
The current Mrs. Michigan was actually my oldest, Christian, his kindergarten like teacher aide.
Okay.
And so it's so funny because then she was like, wait a minute. She saw that I knew this person and she was like, wait a minute.
You always see like on social media when someone friend requests me on Facebook, and I always go to see like, do we have mutual friends? Because I don't know, like sometimes you get those random people that just friend request everybody, but I can always tell right away, like, oh, is this a potential client? Is this a potential just like a new pageant friend that I could have? Because you see the people who your mutual friends are and who you're associated with. And I get that. So I love that.
Yeah, it wrapped me in and I'm like, you know what? I think this is finally the time. So I'm doing it. I'm excited. But what's funny, my youngest is like, you go for it, Mom. But my oldest will look me dead in the face and say, Mom, I don't think you're going to win.
You know what? That's okay. Everybody needs one kid who's like their diehard fan, and everyone also needs a kid that will just be like brutally honest.
That will humble you quickly.
Yes.
We all need that. So
I was just going to say, everybody needs to be brought down to earth once in a blue moon. So that's amazing. That's awesome. I love that.
It's hilarious. So
I love that.
That's my journey. That's how I got involved. And so
awesome.
Here we are.
Okay, so Mrs. America is not associated with Miss America, correct?
Right. They're two separate. They actually have their own Miss competition as well.
Okay. Oh, okay. So obviously this is an answer that, you know, I already knew, but that's only because of my involvement in the pageantry world. But I do think that it's important to differentiate pageant systems for people because a lot of people don't understand. For a lot of people, I think that they would assume that you have Miss America's Teen, Miss America, and Mrs. America, and they all go on a press tour together and they all do events together because they're all one, but they're not. They're separate. So I love that. I love that you found a new opportunity where you can continue to grow, continue to really just stretch your creative muscles and your muscles as a woman and to help out other people in your community. So with that in mind, I do know that there is a platform that you have in the Miss America organization. And is that what they call it, their platform, or do they call it something else?
It's a platform.
It is a platform. Okay. Mm-hmm. See, my old school words are working okay here because
it's still a platform, which is what I always still call it anyway. And I'm like, I'm showing my age, but yeah.
I know. Me too. With Miss America, it's now called, you say, because I can never say it right. It's a social impact initiative.
The social impact initiative. And
I got it.
But now it's just like a service initiative.
Oh, I
I
think
think
you're
that's what
right.
it's
You know
called.
what?
Yeah.
I heard one of the newer girls who's competing at Miss Michigan this year. She was in the studio recently, and that's what she called it too. But I didn't know if that's what she was calling it or if it had been renamed. And if you're not familiar with the Miss America organization, there's been a lot of changes over the last probably, I don't know, 5 years. And at one point we were Miss America, then it was Miss America 2.0, and we were focused less on glam and pageantry and more on it being a job interview. And there was talks about getting rid of talent. And as many of you know, we no longer have swimsuit. Instead, we have fitness. There's just been a lot of changes, but there's also been changes to names of competition. So I will always call it a platform. And your platform is that one thing that you're super passionate about, that you want to speak about and advocate for. So, okay, so going back, so your platform for Mrs. America, can you tell me what it is?
It's don't worry, don't wait, early intervention services. And so it's something that I have dealt with personally because my son was born with a developmental delay. So he has benign hypotonia, which means he just has low muscle tone.
Okay.
A lot of people call it like floppy baby syndrome is actually because they don't have muscle control really.
Okay.
So I started to notice things really early on, which now hindsight looking back, he had a hard time taking a bottle. That's why we had an extended stay in the NICU. Well, his muscles, that hypotonia, that low muscle tone isn't in your entire body, and including all of the muscles in your mouth, which means that he could not take a bottle. And so I noticed things really early on, like he was not bearing any weight on his legs. So he's like 9 months old, and his legs are an accessory at this point.
Okay.
Like there's no use for them at this point. And so I bring this up to the pediatrician and and this is where it comes, you don't want to worry, but you don't want to wait. Because
Right.
you can wait. Everyone develops at a different time.
For sure. And yeah, and I think that's important for young moms to understand that that just because your niece or nephew started walking or talking or cutting teeth at a certain age doesn't mean that your child is going to do that, but that also doesn't mean that your child is developmentally delayed either. Every kid is at a different pace. I had one of my daughter was speaking full sentences at 18 months. And I mean like having a full on conversation. My son really did not speak until he was, I don't know, 3.5. But a big part of that was because he had an older sister who spoke for him. And when someone would ask him a question, she would say, I got this. So every kid is different because different circumstances, and sometimes just because they're different, and that's okay.
Yeah, they're different. But the great thing about early intervention services was it's free. Every state has their own type of program. It can be called different things, but here in the state of Michigan, it's called Early On.
Okay.
And you just put in for a referral, and they will contact you, and it's for kids from 0 to 3.
Okay, that's amazing.
And for all sorts of different reasons, any sort of delay that you're worried about, any sort of disability, physical or cognitive, they offer physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, all free. But people don't know that it's there.
No.
And so my pediatrician told me.
Okay,
Yeah, my sister is a pediatrician.
Okay.
So that's helpful. I always have that in my back pocket. My sister-in-law is also a pediatrician.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You hit the jackpot.
Yes.
That's amazing.
So I put in the referral. They contacted me, and I then went to go see their physical therapist. They can only give you so much time because they only have so many resources.
Right.
But so we qualified, though. They test you to make sure that you qualify. So they have a scoring rubric and everything. And my child clearly is qualifying for everything. Like he can't sit by himself.
Oh, yeah.
So at this point, when we got in, he was 11 months old. My 11-month-old could not sit. He could not go from like laying down to sitting up. Like there's no movement. If I put him somewhere, he's not moving.
Wow.
And so he obviously qualified. So he was getting PT services there and occupational therapy services because he was not feeding himself at all. Like kids pick up Cheerios and pick up things, and my son was doing none of those things at that time. And then at 18 months, he started speech therapy because that's typically when they start speech therapies around 18 months.
Right.
And so for him, the first time that he said cheese, like for a picture, is a big moment.
Yeah.
And I would love to advocate for this because parents, the first and foremost, they don't even know that it's there.
Right. Right.
And so
I never heard of it until you told me about it. I had no clue that that was even a thing. And then not only is that service there, but that it's free. So when you know that there's a service out here that can be beneficial, but also that it's a free service, that's incredible.
it's life changing. It changed the trajectory of my child's life
Wow.
because 80% of a child's brain is developed by the time that they are 3 years old.
Right.
And I think people have hesitations because none of us want something to be different with our children.
Right.
We don't want them to be behind. We're afraid to know more information.
Yes.
Because it's so scary. And I totally understand that because I've been there. But knowledge is power.
For sure.
So you have to get over your own fear because that's going to not benefit your child. And so if someone can just take that first step, go online, make the referral. And it's by your local school districts. And so that's how it works. So all of our services are through the Clarkston School District because that's where we're at. They're all public programs. So they're all through, they all run through the state of Michigan in that way. And so I always encourage parents, even if you're worried, go get them checked out. Maybe they're not qualifying and you're good, but then you have that extra security. It didn't cost you anything. It cost you an hour of your time. And
that's amazing. Wow.
It's awareness. I'm so glad too that now I can be a resource for people. Like I have a ton of parents that come up to me because I talk about it all the time. That come up to me and ask about their own kids or what they think, or there are parents who their children maybe have like a cognitive disability, but they don't know what to do. Now, I don't have that particular situation, but I am the only person they know who has dealt with the school system or something in a different way.
Right.
And so I'm glad that I can be a resource, but the number one thing I've learned is talk about your life. Talk about what you're doing in your experiences, because you don't know who's listening. You don't know who needs to hear it, and it can change somebody. So don't be afraid to talk about what you're doing. And I think people get embarrassed too sometimes because they don't, like I said, they don't want something to be wrong with their children. Or they're afraid, but just do it. It's going to benefit them. My kid went from having an IEP, possibly going into preschool, to being in a special education preschool, to being mainstreamed right from the get-go. And I know that is all because of the work that these therapists put in to do this. Because he was going to therapy. I had to do, in addition to the early on services, we did have a PT too at a private place because he needed more time. He just needed more services.
But just the fact that you knew that, like that you did that early intervention and you knew what he needed. So then by the time he went to preschool, he was on his path. Imagine had you not had those early intervention services. And is he in, so that's your youngest. So he's still in preschool, right?
Yeah, he's in 4-year-old preschool right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's mainstreamed though. Mainstreamed.
That's amazing.
Watching that kid play his first soccer game, I was like crying. I couldn't.
That makes me like that. Honestly, sorry. I just noticed I have a terrible curl right here. I look like a banana curl, Nellie Olson from 1980. I look over because
it looks
I'm
good
looking
here.
at you. Well, no, I broke it up, but I was looking at you and then I caught a whiff of myself and I was like, ugh. Anyways, sorry. I can't even imagine what it was like sitting on the sideline watching your child play soccer when, he's only 4, but then at 11 months, that poor babe couldn't even sit up on his own.
Mm-hmm. He couldn't do anything.
Imagine the progress and as a mom, like I think that something that you said that really resonates so much with me, and this is not even just about like what you're specifically talking about today, but just in life in general, is talk about your life. You never know how what you're going to share is going to impact somebody else. And I don't know what your background is in terms of like religion or anything like that. I'm a Christian, and so I feel like God gives us all a testimony. And for me, I would say like that is a testimony for you. That's a testimony for your son. Like speaking to God, putting those right people in the right places at the right time. And, you having these resources at your fingertips, but also the fact that then you go out there and you share that and you tell other people about that and you're open with your experience because you just don't know. You might be talking to somebody, but someone else is overhearing and saying, hey, my nephew is having these issues right now. Can I get your contact info? Can I link you up with, my niece or whatever? Like that is so powerful. And that's why I think it's important to share your testimony or whatever you want to call it, but to share your story and to share your life because you don't know who you're going to impact. You just don't.
It's true. So I've had moms reach out to me because I'll talk about it every once in a while on my Instagram stories. And then I will have other moms reach out to me. Like one of them, they didn't know, but they knew something was off with their daughter, but they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out she needed glasses. But she's like, I would never have taken her if it
Right.
wasn't for you talking about it. And now everything is back on track and, she's
Amazing.
developing at a normal pace, all because she needed glasses at a young
And
age.
sometimes
It
glasses,
is.
that's done in a couple of appointments.
Yeah,
And it's done and it's,
very easy. My son had orthotics, so he had
Mhm.
actual braces on him. And I know that there are parents who get nervous about going down that route too, because
sure.
your kid does look different, right? They're going
Right.
to go to the playground and they do look different. But those are the tools that are available that make them thrive and can help them and
For
give them their
sure.
independence.
For
And
sure.
so there's a balance, right, between like overbracing your child. And
Yeah.
so you take your information from all your team and you create a great team. And that's what we had. We had a phenomenal team of therapists, the program director at Clarkston, 5 stars. I love that
That's
woman.
awesome.
She's phenomenal. Really advocated for my son as well. And my orthotist for my son, they all work together.
That's amazing.
And it's been life changing. And now he gets so upset because he can't like run as fast as his brother who's older. Which like
Right.
You're younger, you're not going to run as
You're
fast.
younger.
But,
You're not going to.
but also it's so hard because for me, I'm like, you're running.
Right. Right.
You're running. I didn't know if he was ever going to walk unassisted. I didn't know if he was ever going to run. And I come at it from a different perspective of just
Right.
like, wow, look at you go. Look at you go.
Oh
Look
my
at what you
gosh.
did. And
That's
so
amazing.
that's my platform. That's what I love to talk about and encourage others to learn about the program.
Your platform comes from such a place of passion and life experience because you truly can take that out and you can touch people and you can help change people's lives. And so when you have those naysayers who are saying things like, oh my gosh, pageants, or she's a pageant girl, or oh my gosh, pageants are the worst, but they're not. Like, the thing is they're not. There's upsides and downsides to anything that you will ever participate in or anything that you will ever let your kids participate in. My son is a high school wrestler. We have our high moments and we have our low moments. Like, you'll definitely hear me complain about it as much as I will praise his wrestling program that he's in and his wrestling experience, just because that's life. Everything is not peachy and hunky-dory all the time. But what I love about pageantry is, sure, you're going to get on stage and you're going to walk in your gown and you're going to look gorgeous. And you came and you saw me and Jessica and, the 3 of us together, we created this beautiful pageant headshot and it's glamorous and it's amazing. That's going to go on social media and everyone's going to be like, Shelby, you're awesome. But what all that is actually doing is giving you an opportunity to spread a message that might help one parent. And if it helps one parent, if everything that you do helps one parent, then isn't that worth it if it changes one life? So when someone says to me like, oh, pageants, oh, I'm not into pageants, or da-da, and I always say, that's unfortunate. That's such a shame. You must not know much about them. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I know how much we can impact people and change people's lives and existence by being good role models and by living our own experience and being authentic and transparent and open and sharing things. It's not all about beauty and rhinestones and gorgeous dresses. Like, that's part of it, but like, that's a very surface level part of it. It's so much deeper. So I love that you're taking this title as Mrs. Clarkston so that you can educate, inform, inspire people. And it's my hope and goal that you'll get to take this platform all the way up to Mrs. America, because the truth is, Shelby, I can't think of anybody that would be a better Mrs. America than you. Like,
You're so sweet.
no, I'm so serious because you're so genuine and you have so much energy. You're really fun to be around and you're a person that makes other people feel good. And you're a person that makes other people feel validated and heard. And I think that that is really important in a title holder, that mind frame of, how can I serve and how can I help others? And you're already doing that. So whether you go on to become Mrs. America this year or you don't, I know that you're already serving in all the ways. I mean, you were definitely serving with your headshots. Okay. Yes. But I know that you're serving, and I know that, at the heart of who you are this incredible bubble that has so much to offer. And I can see it's already like bouncing around, and I hope that somebody's listening to the podcast today who will walk away and take this information, and maybe it won't be for a year, 2 years, or 5 years, but one day they might find themselves in a position and they might say, oh my gosh, I listened to a podcast about that one time. I hope that that's what happens. I hope that every opportunity that you have, you are able to touch someone's life. I think that you using your own personal story and being so open is incredible. So I'm really happy that you came on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure. Is there anything that you want to say that you feel like you didn't say, either about your title as Mrs. Clarkston, about your opportunity to go to Mrs. America, or about your platform, or anything else? Any kind of like closing thought that you have that you feel like you didn't get to talk about?
I think there's just one thing, because Mrs. Pageantry sometimes gets a bad rap because for whatever reason.
Agreed. Totally.
But I do have to say, though, if it wasn't for pageantry, I wouldn't get this opportunity to talk to you.
Absolutely.
So can I go volunteer and do all of these things on my own without having a title? Sure, I can, and I do. But is my voice amplified?
Yes.
Because I'm growing my network. And that is how you truly make a difference, is by talking to people and expanding your audience. And it's really a networking opportunity.
Absolutely.
Because not only do I get to spread what I want to do, but I get to hear about all of the important causes that everyone else is supporting and promoting. And that's a beautiful thing.
It's
I
amazing.
want to learn. Let me immerse myself and learn. What a great opportunity. I'm a serial learner. That's what I always call myself.
I love that.
I'm a serial learner. I love to learn and figure things out. And so I think Mrs. Pageantry continues to give you a microphone to continue to amplify your voice in ways that you wouldn't, like I said, like today, this wouldn't happen.
100%. And honestly, what I really like about Mrs. Pageantry myself is that you're competing at a different place in your life than what you were when you were competing within the Miss America organization. Now you have a different life experience that you can share. You have more knowledge, you have more wisdom. And so I think that when you go into Mrs. Pageantry and you have that platform, that microphone that pageantry gives you, I mean, your crown literally becomes a microphone, because when you're wearing a crown, all of a sudden people are willing to listen to you speak. I think that like that crown gives you a microphone, and now you're speaking in such a different way than you ever had the opportunity to speak before when you were younger and when you were a younger title holder, just because you have so much more life under your belt and you have so many more experiences under your belt. So I think that Mrs. Pageantry is amazing. I think you're 100% right. Well, Shelby, thank you so much for coming on. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. We'll be back next Friday with another episode. And if you have anything that you'd like to come on and be a guest to speak with me about, you can email me at camerascrownsandchaos@gmail.com. I hope you have a great day. I hope that you were educated, entertained, and maybe a little bit inspired. Take care.